everyone, this is Erica from Gokche Capital. Today I'm going to go through our fourth episode in our Gokche Investor series. This is continuing our mini-series on our end-to-end acquisition process. And today we're going to focus on another due diligence item. This one is confirming the parcel size. Pretty basic item, but very important. So just a brief recap from the last episode. We did go over one of the first and very most important due diligence item, which is confirming ownership. And today we're going to go over property size. So when we check property size, we use four sources. And I should preface this by saying the only way to be 100% certain of the property size and dimensions is with the survey. And I think the vast majority of real estate transactions, and the vast majority of them, it's a good idea to get a survey before you purchase. We do not always elect to get a survey, primarily when we're purchasing properties that are very low value. So say if it's a $1,000 to $2,000 purchase, that would be a situation where the cost of a survey doesn't necessarily make sense. And also when we're looking at lots that will likely never be built on, so primarily recreational lots. So when we don't get a survey, we use 4 data points to try and determine the property size. There is the deed itself, or the legal description. There is assessor data and the county GIS, which ties into assessor data, and then a data provider. And these are third-party services or companies like Title Pro 247, RealQuest Pro, and DataTree. So I'll start out with a quick story. We bought a property in Pike County, Pennsylvania. According to the assessor, property size was 1 acre. No size was mentioned in the deed, and there was no survey. And the adjacent lots all appeared to be the same size. They had buildings on them. They looked like they were about 1 acre. So we purchased the property, and a neighbor gets back to us. He's very interested in the property, and starts to move forward with the closing. But he eventually gets back to us and he says he is 100% certain that the property is only half an acre. And he did decide to close through title, and the title company did eventually confirm that the size was half an acre. So we called the county and asked them why their data was showing that the property was 1 acre. And they got back to us and said that it was an error on their part, that the property should have actually been listed as half an acre. So the moral of the story is you cannot rely on any one data source. And as I mentioned before, the only way to know for sure how large a property is to get a survey done. So a quick note on deeded acres, or acreage as listed in the deed. This is exactly what it sounds like. Sometimes the deed will mention in the legal description the size of the lot. When we don't get a survey, we take this as the most trustworthy data source, because oftentimes if the actual size is listed in the deed, it would have come from a survey. But the majority of the time, the deed doesn't actually list the size. So then we have to rely on other sources. And the second source would be assessor data. Now, the vast majority of county assessors have an online search tool where you can look up all of the assessor data on the lot. And this will include the property size according to the assessor, or the size that is used for calculating property taxes. We generally consider this reliable data because the assessor will often use the last size that was shown in either a survey or a deed. But as I mentioned in my story before, they are not always 100% accurate. Now there's also county GIS data. Again, most counties have a GIS map of all of their properties. And on the GIS map, there will be a measurement tool. So when we use county GIS data, we literally just measure the lot on the GIS map. But the important thing to note here is that GIS data is often inaccurate, especially when you're looking at smaller parcels. So this data point we really only use to confirm that the measurement tool lines up in more or less with the number we got from another source. We would never take just the measured size from the GIS data on its own. So here's a story about calculated size versus deeded or assessed size. We bought a very small parcel in West Virginia, and there was no size listed in the deed. So we took the size from the assessor, and a potential buyer came back to us saying that we were misrepresenting the property size because the measurement tool on the GIS map calculated a slightly smaller size on the lot. So I did call the county assessor, and they gave me the measurements that they had on record, which came out to the size listed in their data, or the original size that we had posted in our ad. So, moral of the story is here, GIS measurement tool can be off, especially for smaller parcels, and a survey is the only way to confirm the actual size. And finally, the last place that we get data on property size is from a third-party data provider like TitlePro, RealQuest, DataTree, etc. These third-party providers basically aggregate data from various county assessors. The problem with data providers is there are often or sometimes mistakes in the data. So again, as with the GIS map, we would never just use a third-party data provider to figure out the property size. And then here's another little story on that. Early on in our investing, we sent a 2,000 unit mailer to a low investor activity county, and we started to get a lot of calls from potential sellers complaining that our sizes were way off. So we double checked a few of these properties that we were getting calls about and found that the data provider consistently had a decimal point off. So for example, a 0.49 acre property was listed by the data provider as 4.9 acres. So moral of the story is here, data providers can be way off, and if you're going to use their data to do a mailer, make sure you double check a few properties against assessor data just to ensure that their sizes are correct. So the final note here is ideally you'll have multiple data points and they will all align, so you can be pretty confident in the parcel size, or we can be pretty confident in the parcel size. But if there are discrepancies, we first talk to the county, and if we can't clear up the discrepancy, then we need to make a decision about whether we have to do a survey, even if it's a lower value parcel or a purely recreational lot. Because again, the only way to be 100% certain of property size is to get a survey. And I should mention one last time that this video is not meant to show you an alternative to surveys. I'm just letting you know what we do when we make the business decision not to have a survey done. So a final story about property sizes. Again, early on, we bought a large set of properties from one seller. It was 25 or 30 properties. Most of them were very small, but our data provider had indicated that one of the properties was 8 acres. So we paid the price for that property that we considered fair for 8 acres. We found a buyer for the property, and our buyer went to a broker who found out that this particular property was actually only 3/8 of an acre based on the legal description. So we had to renegotiate the whole deal with our buyer based on the updated property size. So this was an early on mistake that we should have easily caught, but we were looking at a bulk set of properties and we did not double check every data point, including the legal description. So moral there, always double check all data points and make sure that there are no discrepancies. Okay, so what's coming up in the next episode? We will continue this mini-series by going into a few of our other due diligence items. And last but not least, I do want to highlight all of our giveaways on our website. And again, mention that for a limited time, we are offering free 15-minute consultation calls. So send us an email if you would like to schedule. And of course, feel free to ask any questions in the comments section. So thank you for listening, and more to come.